And with more on the mysterious death of Andrew Breitbart, we're joined by investigative journalist, former officer at the National Security Agency, Wayne Madsen. The reason I wanted to get Wayne on is he had to leave the country for 4 or 5 months last year because high-level sources told him that the word is the White House is going to kill you, especially if you keep going to Chicago and investigating the mafia ties, the CIA ties, the ties to communist groups. Well, Andrew Breitbart was set, we've now confirmed, as we just covered, to release March 1st, yesterday, the footage of Obama at these communist meetings. Now, it's going to be a few weeks till those get released. Is something going to be redacted? Joining us is Wayne Madsen of WayneMadsenReport.com. Wayne, thanks for joining us. What's your early first take, and what are your sources saying about what happened to Breitbart?
Well, I was covering the Conservative Political Action Committee annual meeting here in Washington about 2.5 weeks ago, and I remember Breitbart giving one of these impassioned presentations. I was told by others there, now I don't recall him saying this, I was told by others there that he had this smoking gun evidence. He didn't get into any details. I spoke to Larry Sinclair, who has some information on Breitbart. Apparently, he called the L.A. Medical Examiner's office, and I think we have to look at the jaded record of the L.A. Medical Examiner's office in high-profile deaths. I mean, starting with Marilyn Monroe and a few others. But I think we have to wait to see what the autopsy says. And look, even if there are drugs found, the word is that he was drinking in a bar earlier that evening before he died of an apparent heart attack on the sidewalk, I guess in the Brentwood neighborhood. And I've been cautioned many times to watch my own unattended glass of wine and various establishments I've been to here in Washington, because, as you said, I received 3 credible threats from 3 credible sources. So I don't take those threats lightly. Look, the history, we've had some journalists in this country who have been murdered, starting with Danny Casolaro, who was investigating George H.W. Bush, and Gary Webb, who supposedly committed suicide. Both these were said to be suicides. Gary Webb had done a seminal work on the whole CIA cocaine importation business in this country. So, I don't take the fact that a journalist who may be on the verge of something dying suddenly, I say let's wait for the evidence.
Well, I know this kind of, alternative Republican muckrakers like Michael Savage are hiding out, do have bodyguards. I knew this from private sources that never mentioned it, but now Savage has talked about the fact that he warned Breitbart when he met with him a few years ago to get bodyguards. The fact that I've talked to some other people close to Breitbart and that, they're concerned and think that this was some type of killing. I mean, look at what Obama's doing, the people that blackmail him. He's stealing trillions of dollars and giving it in special contracts to people. And we know the Republican and Democratic power structure fight with each other over the levers. We know Obama ran Fast and Furious, all these other criminal operations. So I think we'd be foolish not to look at this suspiciously. But yeah, he could have died of drugs, heart attack, whatever. The fact that it's the day he's saying he's going to release this stuff, and then now it hasn't been released, that just sends up big red flags for me.
Well, and let's look at whatever he had. If it's early footage or photographic evidence of Obama attending Marxist meetings or communist meetings, whether he was there with Bill Ayers or Bernardine Dorn or any of these people, my contention is that Obama was selected at a very young age to infiltrate these groups. And I got word, of course, from old members of the Black Panther Party in Chicago that when he showed up, after he left that CIA job in Manhattan, when he showed up in Chicago suddenly and saying, "Hey, I'm Barry Obama, and I'm really, I'm really in with you guys here." And they told me they knew he was a plant from the very beginning because they said he was a phony. They knew he wasn't from their neighborhood, that he had been parachuted in, is the word I got. And they were, having dealt with COINTELPRO and FBI infiltrators for years, they were very suspicious of him. So I think this has to be, this report, if true, has to be looked at in context that Obama was, basically chosen to infiltrate these various groups because of his own background. Half African American, had a Indonesian stepfather, attended a Muslim school in Jakarta. So, this was the perfect candidate for that.
He's been an operative most of his life and lived around it. You've been to Indonesia, you've been to the Middle East, you've been to Libya, you've tracked all this, but you didn't start getting these death threats from sources saying, yeah, this is coming from the White House as a warning until last year. What was it you were working on? I mean, I know it was going to Chicago. What were you looking into that has got them threatening you? Because obviously that's where we need to look closer.
Yeah, well, it wasn't the story that, of course, Larry Sinclair advanced about his, at least his bisexuality. What I was warned off on was the background of Obama in Indonesia with the Central Intelligence Agency. This is the one thing that they can't handle at the White House. The reason being is they can handle this birth certificate story. They basically run Hawaii. Neil Abercrombie's the governor. He knew Stanley Ann Dunham, Obama's mother. He knew the family. So they and he's governor of Hawaii now. So of course he's in a position to tamp anything down on that front. But I always thought that the real issue with Obama, and the one that they really can't handle, is his links and his possible ties to the Central Intelligence Agency as early on as Occidental in L.A., but possibly even traveling on an Indonesian passport after he reached the age of 18, going to Pakistan, going to India, traveling around on that. And that was basically confirmed to me by somebody who was very close to the office of president of Indonesia, the current president of Indonesia, whose prior job, of course, was the head of the Indonesian intelligence service.
Let's shift gears into NDAA. That's really blown up in Obama's face, the fact that he demanded the secret arrest provisions and the power to kill citizens. It's obviously unconstitutional, but he says he has that power. Now he's saying he won't enforce it and has signed this executive directive to the bureaucracies. But when you have a president seeking the power to kill citizens, even in America, and then his political enemies start dying mysteriously, that pretty much convicts him right there that he was seeking this power. I mean, could we see the implementation of NDAA taking place? We saw Judge Andrew Napolitano, who was anti-war and anti-Republican and Democratic establishment, with some of the highest ratings on Fox Business, fired. We saw the same week Buchanan fired. He said he was told, don't criticize the war, don't criticize what Israel's doing. So I'm seeing a purge, and I've talked to high-level people in the media who've been told, leave Obama alone. Basically, Rupert Murdoch is being blackmailed by the Justice Department over his crimes in England. And sure enough, we now see his son leaving England, people getting arrested. I'm not saying what they did in England was okay. It's just that I think we're seeing an internal power structure battle, because they're obviously for the same global corporate fascist system, but they're fighting over who gets to control that trough. What's your take on that?
Well, look, I think this all started with Bush when we had the unitary executive basically become the law of the land, that the White House enjoys sovereign immunity, even over the Constitution of the United States. And then Obama's done nothing to give up any of those powers. As a matter of fact, he's taken on even more powers. For example, Obama is currently prosecuting at least 7 people under the Espionage Act from 1917. Now, this is the law that Woodrow Wilson used to go after people who thought we shouldn't be getting into World War I on behalf of the United Kingdom. and it was, of course, it was upgraded in 1948 by Senator Pat McCarran. Of course, it was the McCarran Act was finally passed in 1950, and that had to do with further establishing the national security state during the Alger Hiss investigation. So what we have are a Cold War and a World War I law being used now to stifle people in the government from reporting wrongdoing to journalists, and we still have the government trying to put a New York Times reporter in jail for not going before a grand jury to reveal his sources, Jim Risen. So in this respect, Obama is worse than Bush when it comes to this whole frontal attack on freedom of the press in this country. Now, would they go the extra mile and start doing things to journalists or bloggers or anyone else who they find is a threat? I'm still of an open mind because I received 3 credible threats and I took seriously. So I would not put it past them to do that. But I think we have to wait before we start saying anything else. Let's wait to see what the LA Medical Examiner's office has to say.
Sure, but again, I go back to that point that I made right as you were coming on. The fact that within 2 hours or a little bit less of him being announced dead, they were saying natural causes, nothing to worry about, move along, move along. And any other time I've seen it, like with Gary Webb or other cases you mentioned, when they do kill somebody, they immediately announce that it was suicide or natural causes when there is foul play.
I'll tell you, I was almost as surprised to hear who his father-in-law was, Orson Bean, the old panelist on To Tell the Truth, who I think was one of the first people who indicated that it might have been from natural causes. But I frankly thought that Orson Bean had died years ago. So I was almost as surprised about that in this case. I mean, it's very bizarre.
And wasn't Orson Bean even blacklisted back during the Red Scare?
Yeah. He was an aspiring actor in Hollywood who was accused of attending Communist Party meetings. Okay, so here we go full circle, and he was sort of blacklisted in the 50s. So his career really had to do with appearing on as a panelist on To Tell the Truth and the Match Game with Bud Collyer and Gene Rayburn.
Beyond bizarre. Now, I always love the wild card here because we don't do pre-interviews with you, obviously. But you did, right before we went on, mention that you were at the CPAC event and you talked to Mr. Sinclair, and he said he did talk to Andrew Breitbart. So tell us about that, and then briefly, any other things you're investigating right now.
Yeah, I spoke to Larry. I spoke to him at CPAC, but I talked to him this morning, and there was an event called a Bloggers Bash at CPAC. I was not there, but Larry was there, and he told me the next day that he had spoken to Breitbart, and Breitbart had told him about wait till March the 1st about something. Now, in Breitbart's speech to the whole CPAC audience, he said that they said something about some sort of evidence, might have been photographs or video about Obama, but I frankly wasn't paying attention. But I did speak to some other folks who were there today, and they said absolutely that he did refer to that during his speech. No,
we have that clip. In fact, I was going to play it at the end of the interview. Do we have that clip right now? Yes. Yeah, let's go ahead. Can we play that where he can hear it? Okay, great. Yeah, no, here's the clip. In fact, we put this out yesterday morning. We dug up where he told 3 different sources, yeah, I'm going to release the communist stuff on March 1st. Obama's going to really not like this. We're going to take him down. So, yes, he did indeed say and do that, Wayne. Here is that clip of him at CPAC.